Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
Southeast Radio.
Well, completing a multi-million euro funding round in the midst of a pandemic is a daunting prospect. But it was a feat that PlasmaBound managed to achieve recently. Alan Barry, the CEO of PlasmaBound, joins me on the phone now to explain how the company supports manufacturing companies in aerospace, transport, marine and consumer electronics to achieve their respective lightweighting goals. Alan, before we discuss PlasmaBound, provide us with an insight into your own background.
Morning, Karl. Glad to be on the radio. Well, Karl, as it happens, actually, PlasmaBound is a bit of a departure for me because by training I'm a process engineer and I've worked for about 20 years in highly regulated industries, including life sciences. And I've run a number of engineering companies down through those years before I came across the technology in its infancy in 2015.
And what technology was that?
So what this does essentially, we use plasma to ablate the surface of composite materials, fibre-reinforced composites, which reveals the fibres, and this presents the fibres as an anchor matrix for an adhesive. And this is heaven sent for assembly manufacturers because it allows them to infuse the adhesive into the fibres and it gives them very, very repeatable, high-strength bonds every time. Again, a significant problem in the business today.
So ideally, who's this most beneficial to?
I suppose your perfect customer is a high-volume manufacturer who needs extremely highly repeatable and reliable processes with very low waste. So you're talking about automotive Tier 1 manufacturers.
And why is lightweighting so important within the manufacturing process?
Well, lightweighting is an area of intense focus across many sectors for many years, Karl, and what it fundamentally is the substitution of metal and other heavy components with lighter, ideally stronger materials such as fibre-reinforced composites, as I mentioned earlier. It's strategically critical for the future viability of many businesses. So if you look at wearables and consumer electronics, device weight has been a critical consumer selection point for many years now, but particularly and more impactfully for transport, including passenger transport and anything that needs to leave the ground. Lightweighting impacts fuel efficiency, range, battery range and launch weight. And additionally, those industries are under intense regulatory pressure due to CO2 emission targets, which are getting tighter every year and will ramp dramatically in 2025. So if we go back to our ideal customer, if you're automotive, you're most exposed because your users will be penalised per 100 kilometres travelled if your product does not comply with regulations. And furthermore, if you're trying to sell electric vehicles, the weight of the vehicle will have a hell of a lot more to do with the range than the battery.
And so then on that basis, Alan, do you define PlasmaBound as the technology company?
We do, yeah. Because what we do is essentially we provide a technology to the manufacturers and the assemblers involved in lightweighting that enables them to automate their processes, to take it from an 18th century process right now where they have a lot of batch-wise manual steps with very, very poor repeatability. We add some technology to their lines which allows them to remove those batch-wise components, remove quite a lot of waste and allows them to return to the just-in-time high-volume manufacturing processes that they were used to before we started introducing things like composites into the process.
So from an intellectual property perspective, what do you have at PlasmaBound?
Well, what we have essentially is the secret sauce that makes that technology tick. We have identified the process parameters and the characteristics which achieve the area of effect that we control.
And is it a competitive space?
It is a competitive space right now, but it's also a very disruptive space with an awful lot of opportunities because right now, the value proposition you can deliver to a customer if you can remove steps from their process and speed up their manufacturing lines is extremely significant. So it's not as price sensitive as other technologies would be if you can demonstrate you're delivering the value.
It sounds like an ideal company for Enterprise Ireland. What level of support have you got from them to date?
Actually, I can't speak highly enough for Enterprise Ireland. They've been incredibly supportive of us throughout the process of trying to get started up. And the training that we were provided as a startup in terms of how to act as a startup and how to obtain funding. And indeed, they've actually supported the investment round themselves and were a rock, in addition to Atlantic Bridge, who were very supportive during the crisis that we've just tried to close a round within.
And I do want to speak to you about the funding round later in the interview, but first, talk us through the startup phases that you've gone through already.
So initially, Enterprise Ireland actually provided the funding to commercialise the technology in the run-up to 2017. which allowed my brother, Nick, who is the CTO of the firm, to demonstrate the tech and demonstrate the operability of the tech within UCD. After that, they took us on as a pre-HPSU candidate and provided a number of training steps that I suppose engaged and enabled us to develop the right business plans and the right business positioning and differentiations that we needed, that have ultimately delivered significant benefit to us because we've had an enormous amount of success with our pipeline development very early on in the business.
I'm interested in finding out what the process was behind developing the technology at PlasmaBound.
The process was one of industry engagement. There was a significant issue within lightweighting and within composite joining technologies where existing tech had poor repeatability and reliability. And there seemed to be quite a lot of problems in terms of, the outcome of bonding was not very repeatable. So within UCD, a project was established with a number of industry actors to see if they could find a solution to that problem using plasma, which is already a ubiquitous technology within polymer joining industry. And out of that came a number of findings, and one of which was that if you could manage an area of effect using plasma, you would get this result.
Your current stage of development, of course, is that the PlasmaBound technology is out there being tested by 18 companies. What sectors are they operating in?
It's quite a diverse group of sectors. Now, what I will say is the target application is quite consistent, but we are active with trials with automotive, aerospace, space, consumer electronics and wind energy at the moment.
And PlasmaBound recently completed a €1.1 million funding round. How will the company utilise this investment?
Well, what it does is it adds a further 13 months to the already 8 months that we put down prior to the lockdown to continue to pursue, as we mentioned, quite a significant and diverse trial schedule. And it allows us to establish our laboratory in the new Nova UCD East Courtyard purpose-built facility there that just launched this year. And effectively allows us to achieve the objectives of the round, which are to achieve industry validation for the technology in a specific application, ideally in more than one vertical.
And did COVID-19 cause much disruption to your business? And how did you navigate your way through the past few months?
Yes, is the short answer. Unfortunately, most of our client base essentially shut down, as with everybody else. A lot of our customers and a lot of the trialing would be within R&D facilities, so it wasn't really possible to continue on a remote basis. We as a business actually navigated it. We actually used the time to engage with a number of grant funding applications, in particular the EIC Green Deal, which is quite a lot. It's quite an intensive exercise. It takes a lot of time and effort. So in a way, we took the opportunity of the lockdown to pursue something that might have been outside of our abilities had we been as busy as we were up to the lockdown.
And Alan, what is your strategy now to grow this business globally?
To grow the business globally, we need to be able to scale out the tech. So we have a 2-phase product development program over the next 24 months. And we're also in the process of closing 2 strategic partnerships, which will allow us to have a global footprint in terms of presence that is required by multinational customers. We anticipate a Seed Plus round will be required mid to late next year, Karl, to facilitate the full development of the second generation product. And we anticipate growing to 13 people by the end of 2022. Overall, essentially, PlasmaBound will never need a massive footprint, our headcount in order to deliver our business. But to grow globally, we will definitely need to put down regional hubs to be able to deal with customers' localized needs quickly. And we anticipate a Series A round in around 2023 to achieve that.
And in terms of your sales strategy, is it a direct sales strategy, or are you going to be using channel partners or agents or distributors?
Absolutely. So initially, particularly in this early stage, a lot of our sales will be direct and a lot of our engagement is direct. We're already acting with partner companies who are incentivized to, I suppose, act as channel partners for us. For example, plasma equipment manufacturers. We don't make plasma equipment. We fine-tune it and we modify it so that it works the way we do. So, plasma equipment manufacturers that we partner with will be incentivized to sell our technology in a kind of an Intel Inside model as well.
And Alan, are you growing this business to keep it or to sell it?
The way the business works, to be honest, whatever my personal goals would be, I certainly want to see the business develop. I really believe in the potential that it has to impact the environment. We didn't really get to it on this call so far, but lightweighting will do more for the environment than almost anything else industrially in the near term. For example, if you deployed our technology on your average executive car, it would reduce the fuel burn by over a litre per 100 kilometres. That's significant and tangible. So for me, I want to see this technology out in the market. I can't see a scenario where once the company is viable and has demonstrated the market that we will not be subject to an acquisition, because that's how the industry operates.
What advice have you got to any budding tech entrepreneur listening this morning?
To be candid, engage with Enterprise Ireland, engage with the supports that are out there, the Leo offices. There's an enormous amount of help. Entrepreneurialism can be a very lonely business, and it doesn't have to be. There's a lot of peer support and kind of network supports that you can get by engaging with the community here in Ireland. I would say it's got to be one of the best communities in the world to start a business in, because there's just so much support out there. So don't try to go it alone. And the other thing I would say is don't get too wedded to your tech. Accept negative feedback and see if you can work with it, and how do you modify whatever it is you're doing to respond to that feedback if you need to. But certainly very, very important not to lose sight of the fact that this is a business and you're as much of an investor in it as anybody you're trying to get to invest in it. Don't get too wedded to it. That will be very important.
Well, if you've just tuned in, that was Alan Barry from PlasmaBound, and we wish the company every success with its growth plans.
Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
South